Hello, and welcome to Just Talking Business. August is Black Business Month, and thanks to the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, or the GMCVB, for recognizing the importance and impact Miami's Black owned businesses have in our community. Help us celebrate and support Black businesses all year long. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon at this point, actually. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Stephanie Benbark, and I'm a small business owner. Welcome to Just Talking Business. I don't know if you see, I got another little thing going on with my hair. I got to tell you, I got to do a whole video on all the different iterations of my hairstyle. But we'll talk about that later. We are back today with one of our past guests, Kenzie Perry. If you don't remember, we had him a couple of weeks ago. He is the interior decorator. At the time, we talked to him a lot about operations. Now we're going to get into how and why he's had to pivot on occasions and just the challenges of the industry. Hey, welcome back, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, Stephanie, glad to be back and continue our conversation.
Good, good, good. Thank you for taking the time. So, as I was sharing with our audience before, we talked a lot about operations last time and some of the things that may be of concern coming up, like tariffs, things of that nature. We did not really delve into the challenges you've had to experience. And as I shared with you briefly before that, we want to talk a little bit about the challenges both systemically within the industry and also just some personal challenges, if you don't mind sharing those kinds of stories. We mentioned in the last show that this is 137 what billion-dollar industry. So I can only imagine how, interior decorator to me just sort of really became a thing as I understand it, what in the last maybe 40, 50 years, which doesn't seem like a lot of time. Am I correct? Is that something where that industry has flourished for much longer, or that's really around the time we started to really look at that industry?
Yeah, it was the around that time. I don't know the exact year. I think it probably was around between like the 30s and the 60s
Okay.
that it
Okay.
became a legitimate industry and career.
Okay.
We teach about it a little bit, but every time I do teach, I have to kind of brush up on the facts.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so it is a relatively young industry, and one of the challenges that we do have is always maintaining our credentials, our license, because we do have to sit for a board
Mm.
to be to use the title interior designer, and we are challenged every 2 years whether or not our license is credible or not, and if the work that we do really does make a difference in the well-being of others.
Okay. That's very, I never thought of it looking at that way. Because I remember, I think I shared with you in the last show, my first sort of real introduction to it as an industry is I met a young lady in college who she was studying interior decorating. And I remember asking her, like, where do you go from here? And it seemed like at the time, a lot of it was focused on interior decoration in terms of companies supporting companies. Now it seems to be, it's almost like fashion design, like just as, relevant, important, you know, lucrative as a fashion designing industry. So, systemically, what are some of the challenges? I imagine it's also an industry that ebbs and flows based on the economy. Well, how are those systemic challenges occurring and how are they being addressed?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit last time about the percentage of BIPOC or Black and Brown
Yeah.
designers in the industry, which is about 3 to 5%. So that's a challenge within itself, having the representation and the visibility of being seen in the industry and being having our work discovered, appreciated, and shown across all types of media. But it's definitely, getting better, stronger every year. And then you mentioned one as well. So thank you for helping me out. It's an ebb and flow industry, and when the economy is down, typically the interior design industry also struggles. And one of the challenges that I had as a designer, I was probably in the industry for maybe 2 years. I had graduated in 2006 and I lost my job in 2009 because of
Mm-hmm.
the housing bubble. So I had to pivot
Yes, 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 yes.
about being sustainable. So one of the things that I did was I found a another way of maintaining my income, and I actually went to bartending school. And
Oh, really?
my goal was to bartend at night, work my business during the day.
Okay.
That was still a lot to kind of maneuver, and it didn't work out entirely as I wanted. But I learned something new, and bartending and making drinks is still a lifestyle oriented thing. So it can be a
Mhm.
I guess a branch of creativity that I can blend into my work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh huh.
I mean, but is that something that you would say a creative in this industry would have to start to think about as they're branching out on their own as some kind of backup gig? And when do you feel like one has quote unquote made it to a point where they don't have to do worry about that backup gig?
Huh. I think it boils down to assets, honestly,
Hmm, hmm,
and
hmm.
not even as it pertains to different streams of income, just
Right,
generally
right.
speaking. But yes, I think especially for any creative, I was looking at a YouTube interview of actors recently, and they kept saying, if you're going to get into this industry, you're going to be broke. You're going to be broke. You're going to be broke. And I wouldn't say the same is true for interior design. There are job opportunities available out there, but there are times when you will have to pivot because of the economy, which leads to layoffs, and
Mhm,
you want to
mhm.
make sure that you have other means to generate income. So yeah, you definitely want to start right away if you are considering to being an interior designer. What other ways can you expand your business or scale your business so that when one part isn't working, you have some income coming in from another part?
Now let's talk about our market. You and I are in a market where it's highly developed right now. There's, every other block has a crane, um, and that's pretty much going up through South Florida. There are some markets that don't have that kind of development going on. So is this one of those industries that it's probably going to be best for certain communities, certain markets, certain I mean, are you following the cranes, or do you think you could go to North Florida and be just as successful? And if so, what are those ways of ensuring that?
That's a good question. When all of the construction started in Miami, I would go on the various websites and look at the floor plan. It really was just because I wanted to see what they were doing. And at the
Hmm.
time, I was working for a firm. Currently, I have certain alerts on Google so that when things pop up, I see what's happening in the industry or things that are being built.
Hmm.
But I think, one of the systematic issues that we deal with as small business interior designers or solo entrepreneurs is the fact that there's some red tape that you have to get through in order to be privy to those projects. And some of them are either registering as a small business
Hmm.
or minority business enterprise, or becoming a county vendor, or
Hmm.
networking with these developers that are looking for designers. And when it boils down to it, unfortunately, it's all about the work that you've done before. So
Hmm.
if you're not doing these large scale projects and you're only doing small residential projects, it might be hard to cross that threshold. But you
Hmm.
just have to keep knocking at the door, because eventually someone will give you the opportunity and scaling will eventually happen. But it definitely and certainly does not happen overnight.
But you talk about, those minority opportunities, and I'm in Dade, so I have been a beneficiary of those opportunities as well. But we're taking away DEI. So, have you had some conversations with your fellow DEI folks about how to maneuver that landmine? How do we now, since, governance and different entities like that aren't really obligated to support, BIPOC companies. Now what?
it, I'm between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the media and what we hear,
Mm-hmm,
because I still feel like there's opportunities. You just have to look for them.
mm-hmm,
There are monies available. There are free online classes available to teach you to be more profitable, to learn about work life balance, um, marketing your business, accounting. You just have to kind of scout for them. And I think even though there are large companies, and I won't name them, that have taken away DEI and have followed um, the, I guess, followed what politics have said,
uh-huh.
what that is not important. There are companies and organizations that do care, that do offer advantages for artists and designers and small businesses. So if the hype is happening there, yeah, you don't necessarily want to ignore it, but find a loophole.
Can't figure
Do
it
your
out.
deep dive, do your deep research, because there are opportunities available.
So, okay, we talked a little bit about some of the systemic challenges, especially when it comes to Black and Brown industries. Just overall, right now, the economy's it's weird. I don't feel like the economy's completely shifted at this point. I
Right,
think we're anticipating a shift
right,
because of all the things that's happening in politics. So, in the world that I'm in, we're looking a lot at optics. We're looking a lot at budgets. We're looking a lot at in preparation for and about. How is your industry doing the same thing in terms of looking at or anticipating economics and sort of saying, maybe we should really shift the industry in this way? Or are those conversations that are not being had and more so on the individual level?
um i I haven't heard much about the shifting. I
Hmm.
think the shift comes when, especially during elections, business would typically kind of slow down if they're not sure how the economy is going to go. Because
Hmm.
you don't want to start a project and then you it's belly up because things are not maneuvering the way that you want. So during the election time, it typically is a little slow. The being a part of mailing lists and being connected with other vendors, I think the topic of discussion right now is about the tariffs. So a lot of
Okay.
people are saying, buy from us because we are U.S. made or locally made to, I guess, take advantage of the optics and the talk that's happening now,
Okay.
politics. Because I think a lot of it really is fear based, and
Yeah.
until you really see those tariffs hitting the shelves, and I think some of it has in certain areas,
Mhm.
but I haven't seen it completely shifted. So
Okay.
you just kind of have to again be aware, do your own research, so how to maneuver again in the industry. But I haven't heard much about the industry as a whole.
Okay.
And it's shift.
Um, so again, last show, we thank you so much. You showed us your lovely wallpapers, which has been another revenue stream opportunity for you. Talking tariffs. A friend of mine actually is in the printing world, not wallpaper though. He prints newspapers. Uh, so no competition there, no competition there. But was very concerned about, getting his print products from Canada, which is where it comes from.
Um, mhm,
So that was a concern for him. It really was.
right.
We've later learned there's been some shifts around that, so he's not as nervous anymore. But as someone who is printing product, although decorative, do you are you printing locally or not locally in that way, but just within the country, or have you had to go outside of the country and now are trying to have to readapt and shift?
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you brought up because all of us do business differently. So I really haven't been affected by tariffs because I do print locally.
Okay, good.
Right. So my business has not had to pivot in any way. My prices have remained the same. They're very competitive. And so I'm very fortunate when it comes to that. So I can see how he might be concerned because it is coming from a different country. And those tariffs probably really are happening, but I haven't felt the effects of them.
Now, let's talk about you personally. I'm going to get in your business a little bit here. Think about a time when you've had to just really pivot, and, in terms of your business, and, help talk us through how you got to the solution. Even if at this point you may not even have the solution, what was the thought process, the strategy, the days of crying, blood, sweat, and tears, all the things.
Yeah. So, I wanted to come back because we didn't touch on that. So I think what's important is that whatever your passion is, find a way to make money with it, either by yourself or with someone else or in another company. So, for example, when I first started my business, I literally just jumped off, with the wing and a prayer. And I was praying, like, Lord, please help me be sustainable in order to actually really pursue the business. Because for many years, I've always been entrepreneurial,
Mhm.
but never in a full-time capacity. It's always been
Right.
small jobs here and there. And this was my first time really just saying, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to focus on my business full time. And COVID
Mhm.
made that possible because I was on furlough. So I was unemployed. So I was getting something, while I was
Mm.
building business.
Right.
But once that stopped, then it was, how do I make money? Fortunately,
Mhm.
owners, so you can use your home by renting a spare room, bedroom. There's so many different apps now where you can rent your garage space. You can rent your backyard for events and parties. You can rent a room to make additional income. It's all about assets, right? If you have an asset, you want to be able to have that asset turn over for you repetitively, so you have a
Right.
income. So it's weird because you have to have a lot of faith, when you're a business.
Exactly. That's true. That's
And
true.
I'm seeing how like manifestation happens, in my life, especially when you speak things into the universe. So there was a time where I felt like, okay, there's no money coming in, and I was saying, Lord, I just need a contract job, to
Mhm.
kind of help me sustain for a few months to make some money and put in the bank. And so I've taken on contract jobs.
Okay.
It was an eight
Okay.
position, but unfortunately, I literally had to put my job on the back burner. But it was economically, it worked for me.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
sometimes, I don't know what this law is called, but when you're single, it's like nobody wants you. And then,
Right. Laws of attraction.
when you are
That's
in a
right. Now you know how to
relationship,
see.
and so when I had that contract job, there were opportunities coming, but then I couldn't throw the contract job away. So
Mhm.
I think you have to look at the bigger picture, you know. And I don't regret taking that contract job, but I know once that contract job, I had the opportunity to go back to that contract job. I made a executive decision to say no,
Mhm.
that's not what I want to do, because I knew that other work was coming in. And I think when you make those decisions, the universe opens up so that more income comes into your life. And then when I was saying pursue your passion, one of the other things I do is teach as an adjunct professor at FIU, interior
Okay.
design. So that provides a stream of income. And then I also have the wallpapers. So between, maintaining, making sure the business is sustainable, I rent a space, I teach part-time, and then I also have the wallpaper. And when I grew up, my mom was a big thrifter.
Okay.
And there's something about hunting for treasure and looking for things, like the needle in the haystack.
Reuse, repurpose. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially because thrifting or finding vintage things has character. and it has
Mhm.
personality. It's been somewhere, someone used it, it's been in a home. So I still do a lot of thrifting and I resell. So
Okay.
like four
Okay.
different means of income. And the thrifting thing, I like to do it. Just go out
Okay.
and kind of scout for things, and I just put it online. Sometimes it takes a moment, but then when you hit that sell, it's cha-ching. Thank you for that.
A
Right,
little extra money coming in. Yeah, 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 yeah. But
exactly.
I mean, what talk to about I know we talk, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and we all sort of have these moments of this isn't working. How do I make this work? Um, so talk, when you're going through trying to figure out what those streams of income are you grappling with that somewhat as well, or just really able to really lock down into I'm doing this so that I can really drive my passion? What are some of the conversations I guess you're having in your head at the time?
Hmm. Um,
Put you on the spot. Are those private conversations? Do you not want to share those private conversations?
the conversations that I have with myself, they may not always be positive because I
Yeah.
go into comparison mode, which is easy to do in our human
Yes.
instincts. Yeah. So
Especially as an entrepreneur, there was always somebody out there that you're like, well, they're doing so much better.
right, right. So I just kind of keep moving forward and trying different things, definitely
Okay.
trying different things. I think being connected and continually learning. And I think you have to take advantage of those times when it's slow. Can I go back to school, get a college credit certificate? Can I attend a workshop and learn something? Because there's power in connection. And I'm
Mhm.
learning that more and more. And when I'm busy and I have work, it's hard to connect. So when I have downtime, I make sure I use that to my advantage.
Mhm.
It's joining a chamber, going to different conferences, and shaking hands because you never know
Okay.
who you're going to meet.
That's
So
true.
I
True.
think the conversation that I have with myself is you have to think about the long term goal and write down your goals and what they are. And
Mhm.
it's like, and this is cliche. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I keep okay. And you know what else is very inspiring? Just listening to other people talk, like we're doing right now, because
Mhm.
there's someone who is on my path of trajectory, and the insight and the information that we're giving them is going to be an aha moment.
Absolutely. I agree. That's actually why I do this show. I'm hoping
Exactly.
that's the case.
Right.
I hope that's
And I just got
even
back.
if it's not your industry. There's something you may have done in your operations that people are like, oh, I never thought of that. So yes,
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's inspiring and motivating.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Mhm.
So let's do a checklist of I like to ask entrepreneurs this sometimes of so like you said, when you stepped out to be a small business owner, you did it on faith. Um, we talk about this all the time, my friends and I. There are some personalities that are best suited for this, and then there are but some personalities that are not. Was there a checklist in your head that said, okay, maybe I need to think of these things and is this something I can live with? I have a friend who wanted to be an entrepreneur, but she was honest. I need a check every 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
That might not be, so, think about or talk to us a little bit about as an entrepreneur what are you advising other people who are thinking about taking that leap of faith to think about before they do so?
Well, you can't be an entrepreneur and be broke for sure. You can't. You have to be
Start with
realistic,
that.
right? So fortunately,
Start.
I'm in a place where I've done my due diligence when it's come to my finances. So I have a nest egg to support me. So you
Mhm,
don't want to just
mhm,
jump off on a cliff. Um, and you want to look at your finances. How much do you need to survive? Well, how much
mhm.
do you need to thrive every month?
Yes.
And I
Mhm,
think the
mhm,
checklist for everyone is a bit different. So for me, my
mhm.
checklist was uh, more authenticity to be a creative, because when you work under other creatives, you're not really expressing your own creativity.
Correct.
You're
Correct.
designing
You're
based upon their
yeah.
brand. So
Mhm,
that was a checklist item for me. Checklist item number two for me was flexibility, and like just having owning my own time. And
Uh-huh. That
right,
was a big one for me.
right.
Hmm.
So
That's a big one for me.
yeah, it's not always about working a 9 to 5. If I don't want to work today, or if I just want to go spend time with family, that's what's important for me.
Hmm.
So it's about
Right.
having more work-life balance, because I want to. My saying was, I want to work to live and not live to work.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
So
I mean, which is good a good point. Um, because I know some businesses, especially restaurants that are off for a whole month, or they don't work on certain days. And coming into this, I thought that was a little interesting, because you sort of buy into, in order for you to be successful, you have to be open 24 hours a day. You have to, like, you have to be on the hustle 24 hours a day from sun up to sundown. You have to be on it.
yeah,
And I think mindsets are shifting. So, when did you identify that you were going to be a little bit more focused on your work life balance? Was that something you tripped into, or something that you sort of made a conscious decision of, I love what I do and this is what's going to make me feel whole as an entrepreneur?
I think that came maybe years later, because I did
Mhm.
hit the ground running, like hustling and bustling to get the wallpaper, the first wallpaper line out, and seen. Um,
Mhm.
I think once I started to find my groove and
Mhm.
realize, especially when you plan, or at least have in your mind, okay, what this year is going to be. I know I'm going to make maybe approximately this amount. You can kind of find your groove. So it takes time. There are still times when I still feel like I'm in a hustle and I can't put the phone down, or the
Mhm.
ideas are always coming. Um, but some things I do, and this is maybe coming off the topic a little bit, is because I have the flexibility to work from my home office. I'll take walks
Okay.
sporadic,
Okay.
just to get away from the desk,
Mhm.
because sometimes it's hard to pull away. And most of the time, when I am detached, or reset, you become more inspired, because it's the being in the woods versus looking at
Mhm.
pictures. Yeah.
Mhm. 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 Those are definitely words of wisdom. Hard to live sometimes. I'll own. I'm one of those people. I work from home as well,
Okay.
and I read someone does kind of walks away, and I keep trying to say I'm going to do that, but I don't quite do it. So, have you ever worked in a partnership? And if so, can not necessarily meaning you two own something together, but you've had to work with another contractor on a project.
Oh yeah, I've always had to work with contractors on
And
projects.
how do you work that out in terms of how it operate? Have you all sat down and really structure what that might look like? Or are there, some uh, you just kind of know how to move and operate?
I I kind of know how to move and operate, well, per se. Sometimes when you work for corporate design, you don't really work hand in hand with contractors. Um,
Okay.
the last job that I had was very hands on, from design all the way to installation, being on the site, working with other disciplines that are on the site to make sure job gets done. So it's really about being a personable person with those contractors. And it's not necessarily that we sit down and say, this is what we're going to do.
Hmm.
Once I meet with the client and we come up with the design, then we will hire the contractor. So
And
it's not necessarily a collaboration or a partnership. It's more, hiring the contractor to do what's needed for that project. So
okay.
you just have to make sure you find the right people to work with. Sometimes I don't hire the contractor. Maybe the client already knows the contractor, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, you do what you got to do in order to make that job happen.
So, I don't know what you had to change. What you had to change. Okay, so I wrote this and I thought that was a pretty good question all of a sudden in my head. Um, you know, right now today, thinking of the company that you own, what we've talked a little bit about, or what you've had to change, or what you've had to shift, or how you've had to shift. Now, think about what you need to shift in the future to really get where you're trying to get. Are there any, over the systemic, operational, personnel, economic changes you feel like you need to make in order to really send your company into the stratosphere?
Shifts that I need to make.
Or have you even thought about it?
I have thought about it some. It really is the networking, I believe, because
Okay.
initially when I first started, it was very Instagram based, and again,
Okay.
it was COVID, right? Um, and so you really couldn't do much but be at home.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
realized when you practice something for so long, you really kind of observe if it's working or not. And I realized, okay, Instagram is not paying my bills. I'm on Instagram too much, although I've gotten business from it. And
Right.
it's hard not to go on because you're wearing so many different hats. And right now, I'm working more towards not necessarily residential, but connecting more with city and county because there's
Okay.
jobs. So it's all about the back end, which
Mhm.
is getting the minority business enterprise certification, working with the CRA, becoming a vendor with the
Mhm.
city or the county for more opportunities, and getting out there and meeting other people. For me, it's more about that person to person networking that's going to help build my business, and
Mhm.
also nurturing those persons or companies that refer business to me, because you want to make sure you keep that line of communication open, um, because I'm grateful when people refer business to me. So
Mhm.
it's all about those relationships. I think relationships are very, very important
Mhm.
when it comes to scaling your business, although relationships can be,
As well.
messy sometimes.
Right. A bit challenge as well. But is that a part of your daily task, or not daily task list? So, I say all the time, I have time management issues. So I'm trying to shift, where those growth opportunities are. Are you being intentional about, I will go to this networking opportunity? I will, craft these kinds of relationships. Is that active part of your to-do list?
Yeah, I actually created a task list once. Like on Mondays would be planning, Tuesdays and Thursdays would be something art based, whether it's
Mhm.
creating marketing or wallpaper. Wednesdays was for website and development. Fridays was for finances. And
Okay.
that worked out for a little bit, until you get a project, or because then things just shift. So you just have to be flexible, but having a plan definitely does help
Okay.
in some capacity. So then when you do have that downtime, you can go back to your plan and work it out, put
Okay.
it put it into action.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate you. Any last words to small business owners, either industry or not in the industry, as to, how they can be the best that they can be?
Yeah, don't give up. Even if you have to take a part-time job or a contract job, um, look at other people's stories and see how they've come from
Mm.
X to Z or A to Z. It was not a short term trajectory, and success does not go in a straight line. Just remember that it zigzags, swirls up and down, and there are many people that started from scratch with just selling ties, and now they have a fashion line, or having you said I look like Steve Jobs earlier. A mainframe to now having an industry with tons of computers. But I think you have to define I think you have to define what success looks like. Do you want to be a mega business, or do you want to be a mid-sized business? For me, I don't think I want to be that big, because I still want to be creative. And when you become that big, sometimes it's hard to be hands on.
Right.
So don't give up, define your business, and keep pushing forward.
Thank you for those words of wisdom. And before we leave, final words for real. How can we find you again?
Oh, you can find me at www.ze-house.com. So HAUS is the way that you spell house. And you can find me on Instagram at the same name. It's at ZE but underscore house.
Thank you so much for joining us again. This was very informative, and and as you said before, I think somebody will hear this and say to themselves, "Okay, I can do this." But most importantly, he's given me sort of some things to visualize as I move forward. So I thank you for that and sharing your personal story.
Absolutely, always a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me see. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining us again. We will be back here next week, as we usually are. And I thank you so much. Please join us again. But watch this episode all the way through. It was amazing and definitely taught me a lot, actually. So, have a great day.